Ever feel like you're drowning in information? You know, bombarded with headlines and data, but still thirsty for actual insights.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, we're all so busy these days. It's hard to get past the surface level.
That's what we're tackling today. This deep dive is all about bridging that gap between in-depth research and the actual decisions being made.
Right, getting those academic insights into the hands of the people who actually make the rules.
Exactly. So we're talking about how research, specifically in international business, can actually influence public policy.
How do we make it relevant, actually impactful?
Right. Not just sitting on a shelf in some library. And you know
Yeah.
what? You sent over this really insightful editorial from the Journal of International Business Policy, JIBP.
Oh, yeah, that one. It's like a peek behind the curtain. Researchers thinking about how to make their work matter outside of academia.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, let's unpack it. What's in this editorial? How can academics shape the policies that really affect all of us globally? What makes research stick, resonate? You know,
The good stuff.
the good stuff. All right, so right off the bat, this editorial talks about this growing emphasis on societal impact, not just within institutions, but also in journals, like the Academy of International Business, AIB, and JIBP, right?
Yeah, it's a big shift. I mean, for a long time, academia was all about, publishing citations, staying within those
The
walls.
ivory tower.
Exactly. Now there's this push to be more responsible,
Right.
relevant, actually contribute to making things better. AIB is a great example of that.
And JIBP really zeroes in on policy impact. Like, how much does this research actually affect what policymakers do?
Huge. And this is where it gets interesting. It's not just about, getting your name out there in the academic world.
Right, it goes way beyond that.
It's about tangible effects, like think economy, society, actual policies. It's like that definition from the UK's Research Excellence Framework, the REF, back in 2021. They really emphasize the broader impact of
Oh,
research.
right. Societal impact, they called it.
Exactly. And, researchers are motivated, right? Partly it's this desire to actually make a difference. You work on something for years,
You want it to matter?
of course, but there's also those external factors, like how much impact does your research have? That's becoming a bigger deal for career evaluation.
And funding opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing, and the editorial touches on this, actually turning research into real policy changes. That's a whole other beast.
It's not a straight line.
No, not at all. I mean, think about it. We've all seen amazing research that just kind of disappears,
Yeah.
never really makes a splash outside of, academic circles.
It's that disconnect
Yeah.
between the rigor of research and the fast-paced world of policy.
Right. And sometimes, let's be honest, politics gets involved. So this editorial, it's like a guide to navigate that.
A roadmap.
Mm.
So who's the audience for this research then? The editorial talks about policy actors,
Mm-hmm.
but that's broader than just policymakers, right?
Much broader. It's not just about the people signing the bills, making the laws. It's everyone in that ecosystem. Advisors, think tanks, NGOs, you name it.
Whole network.
Yeah, and these folks, they often have more bandwidth, more specialized knowledge to actually dig into the research.
So maybe focusing on them is more effective than going straight to the top.
Could be. The policymakers, they're pulled in a million directions.
A million, yeah. So the editorial, it brings up this idea of policy entrepreneurs. What's that all about?
Ah, those are the game changers, the connectors. They might be policymakers, they might not, but they're good at seeing a problem, a policy problem.
And finding that solution.
Yeah. And they often draw on academic research to do that. They're like the bridge between those two worlds.
Fascinating. So they're the ones translating the complex research into something actionable.
Exactly. They have the social skills, the resources. They can see those windows of opportunity for change.
I like that. Windows of opportunity.
Like Jeremy was talking about in 2019, how that global value chain framework, it took off in intergovernmental organizations. A lot of that was thanks to policy entrepreneurs.
So for researchers looking to have an impact, finding these folks is key.
Absolutely. Build those relationships. Policymakers are important, but these connectors, they're the ones who can really move the needle.
Okay, so we know who we're trying to reach. Now, how do we get the research in front of them and make it stick?
The editorial digs into that, this whole idea of understanding the policy process, because it's not simple.
It's not just research to law.
Not even close. It's all these interactions, different actors, organizations. It's about how policies are prioritized, developed, the whole shebang.
So researchers need to understand what these policy actors are dealing with on a daily basis.
Definitely. Their pressures, the culture of their organizations, the whole political landscape, it's a different world.
A different beast. So how do researchers gain that understanding?
Well, the editorial has some great suggestions. For one, keep an eye on government websites, international organizations, look at their agendas, what they're prioritizing.
Like, are they even talking about the things you're researching?
Exactly. And Curran and Carrasco-Farré, they did this cool analysis in 2024 looking at EU public consultations on the carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Right, seeing what people were actually saying, the arguments being done.
Exactly. And policy briefs, flagship reports, those are gold, like those UNCTAD reports, the World Investment Report. Axel Giroux has been doing these awesome reviews of them in JIBP.
Bridging that gap, making
Yeah.
the research accessible.
Yeah, those are great. And even something as simple as following policy scholars on social media. The editorial mentions Simon Evanet, Andreas Rasch. Those are some good ones to check out.
Stay in the loop, see what's being debated.
Right. And all of this, it gives researchers context so they can align their work with those hot-button issues.
So it's not research in a bubble. It's about knowing what's actually relevant right now. What keeps policymakers up at night?
Exactly. So we've got the audience, the context. Now it's about engagement, actually connecting with these policy actors.
Making those relationships.
And doing it throughout the entire process, from, coming up with your research question all the way to sharing your findings. That's what the editorial emphasizes.
So get them involved early on.
Yeah, they can provide insights, help you refine your questions, make sure you're tackling something they actually care about.
It's like a demand-driven approach. They're coming to you for answers.
That's the dream. So now it's about crafting your message. How do you present this research? The editorial gets into some nitty-gritty here, starting with the abstract and introduction.
The first thing people see.
And sometimes the only thing. Policy actors, they're busy. They're looking for those key takeaways right away.
So you got to hook them.
Right from the start. Make it clear why this research matters, what the implications are for policy.
No burying the lead.
Exactly. The abstract is like your executive summary. The introduction, that's your elevator pitch. Get to the point, make it relevant.
And it's not just about the intro, right? You have to contextualize the entire research project.
Oh, definitely. You can't just throw theory and methodology at them. They need to see the real-world connection.
They'd be tangible.
Yeah. Use examples, reference current debates, things that are on their radar. The editorial has some good examples, like Gireffi's work in 2020 on medical supply shortages during COVID.
Right, linking it to a real problem, a policy failure.
Exactly. And Andres and his colleagues in 2023 explaining those complex trade activities of multinational enterprises, how it all ties back to policy.
So ground your research in reality. Show them why it matters to their world.
And it doesn't have to be just, the latest headlines. Historical perspectives, comparisons, those can be super valuable too, as long as you connect it back to the present.
The key is relevance.
Always. The editorial also talks about positioning for search, which is interesting.
What's that about?
It's about making your research easy to find. Policy actors, they might use Google Scholar, but they also rely on those policy-specific platforms.
Newsletters, digests, things like that.
Exactly. So you got to think like them. Use the terms they're using. Make your titles, your keywords super clear.
So if someone's searching for info on a specific trade agreement, boom, your research pops up.
Right. Don't make them work for it.
Okay, so we've got their attention. We've shown them why it matters. Now, how do we make sure the message hits home?
This is where clarity and feasibility come in. What kind of impact are you aiming for? Do you want to influence legislation? Shape public opinion, evaluate existing policies?
There's different levels of impact.
For sure. And the editorial makes a distinction between policy insights and policy recommendations.
What's the difference?
So insights, they're about understanding the problem. Like Avanet and Pisani in 2023, their work on divestment from Russia.
I remember that one.
They basically showed that companies weren't divesting as much as everyone thought, just one statistic, but it challenged assumptions, sparked a lot of discussion.
A real eye-opener.
Exactly. And Eden and Wagstaff, back in 2021, their paper on gender equality measures, that provided valuable insights into what actually works.
Okay, so insights are about digging deeper into the problem.
Right. Now, recommendations, those are about solutions, specific actions policymakers can take. But the editorial is cautious here. Good recommendations, they're hard to come by.
You have to really understand the system.
Yeah. The political realities, the resources, the limitations. Like Fu and his colleagues, their 2022 paper on vaccine joint ventures, that was a more direct recommendation.
Okay, so insights are recommendations, but not necessarily both.
Focus your energy, do one really well, and whatever your message is, state it clearly. In your discussion, your conclusion, make it explicit.
Don't make them read between the
No,
lines.
spell it out and be honest about limitations. Don't oversell your findings.
That undermines credibility.
For sure. And when it comes to recommendations, feasibility is key. They have to be realistic.
Grounded in the real world.
Exactly. Policymakers need to know, can this actually be implemented? Do we have the resources? Who's going to do it?
It can't just be a pie-in-the-sky idea.
And the editorial talks about this holistic view. Like, how do your recommendations fit into the bigger picture? What are the ripple effects?
Because everything's connected.
Right. Show them you understand that. It makes your work more valuable. And finally, and this might seem obvious, but communication.
Oh, that's huge.
Huge. Lose the jargon, the academic language. Policy folks, they want clear, concise writing.
Straight to the point.
Exactly. And there's this great quote from one of the JIBP's Policy Advisory Committee members. If it's jargon thick, I'm gone.
Ouch.
Right? So connect those academic concepts to the words policymakers are already using. The editorial calls them frames or buzzwords.
Speak their language.
Exactly. Make it relatable. And, it's great that JIBP is not just talking the talk. They're actually taking action.
Yeah, tell me about that.
They've got this policy advisory committee made up of people who've been there, done that in the policy world.
So they're advising the editors, giving feedback to authors?
Yep. Ensuring the research is actually relevant to policy. And get this, they're using AI to create plain language summaries for every publication.
Whoa, that's cool.
Right. It breaks down those complex findings into something anyone can understand. And they're translating abstracts into multiple languages: French, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, German.
Reaching a wider audience.
Exactly. And they have this dedicated newsletter tailored for policy folks with plain language summaries of relevant articles.
So they're actively pushing their research into that world. I love it.
They're really walking the walk.
So to sum it up, making research impactful in the policy world, it's more than just great findings, isn't it?
It's about knowing your audience, speaking their language, making your research relevant, clear, and doable.
Humanizing the policy actor. Seeing things from their perspective.
Totally. And it's a long game. It takes effort, engagement, a real commitment to bridging that gap between research and policy.
It's a two-way street.
Absolutely. Hopefully this deep dive has given you a better sense of all that, the complexities of policymaking, but also how research can really make a difference.
And how to evaluate information, see its potential impact.
Right. Because it's not just about academics, it's about all of us.
So here's a final thought. What about in your own field? What are those plain language summaries that are missing? How can we connect the experts with the decision makers?
And what role can each of us play in that?
That's something to think about.
Food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time. See you there.